All right, everyone. We're letting you in just about 30 seconds early. Welcome. We're so glad to have you all here. Happy Tuesday to everyone. Almost said happy Wednesday. Sometimes hard to keep track of the days, especially as we got holiday seasons approaching. We're so excited to have you all here for the Safety and Strategy, FDSOA's approach to calculated risk in the fire service. If you're here, as you can see, this is a Zoom meeting, not a Zoom webinar. So this is kind of a new series that we are launching and doing with FDSOA. I highly encourage everyone to, if you so desire, have your cameras on. This is going to be very much a sort of a kitchen table type environment where this is going to be somewhat informal. I am going to be serving as the technical support co-moderator here with Eric Valliere. And if you have any questions or anything come out, please feel free to direct message me throughout this. But the format today is that Eric will serve as the MC moderator, and we'll turn it over to Lance and Mike, who are both going to give presentations. And then after that, it is going to be open to all of you. If you have a question, we want you to ask it. If you've got a comment, we want you to communicate it. We do ask when that time comes not to hog the microphone. To please keep your comments to around 30 to 60 seconds so everyone has a chance to talk. But this is really meant to be a high calorie, high value hour of content for everyone. And so if I could ask if everyone, if you want to start with first firing up the chat, letting us know where you're calling from, what department are you with, which company you're with, what city are you from? We love to know. And this is also being recorded. So don't worry if you miss it. If you're watching this later, we're glad to have you here. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Eric. And Eric, floor is yours.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody. This is the first of what we plan to do moving forward. We'd like to do something similar to this, one every other month. And sometimes there'll be a kitchen table talk, and sometimes it'll just be a webinar where we're talking at you and talking about real time issues and subject tied to the fire service. Super excited about it, and once again, thank you for taking time out of your day. I see you guys, some of you guys grabbing notepads, man. I love that. I love that. And I really look forward to a good conversation throughout this after our key instructors go through their presentation. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Eric Valliere. I started my fire career back in '91, so I've been in the business about 33 years. I started with Mesa Fire. I came to Scottsdale when they went municipal. And so I've been here about 20 years. I'm currently an assistant fire chief, and I've managed pretty much every section of the organization, and just loving what I'm doing and loving the fire service like I know you guys are, and I see the smiles on some of your faces because you dig it, and you're doing the right things for the right reasons. So I became a member of the board from the FDSOA. I got certified back in '04, came on the board in 2013, and then worked my way into the chair position. This is my second term, full term that I'm starting with in January to be a part of this organization. And I got to tell you, nothing fires me up more and brings more passion to my heart and my soul than working with people like you that really have a care for other individuals in the fire service, which is all about delivering the mission to the community and to the people that we serve. So, and I said community, and you are a part of the community. This is a community I want to develop. I want to increase. I want you to tell two friends and them tell two friends, because what we're trying to do here with the personalities we have, not only on the board but in our key instructors and what we're doing in the association I feel like it really matters. We get great partnerships with all the other great organizations out there, Fallen Firefighters, Fiero, Cancer Support Network, Science Alliance. We have some really great teams we work with to carry that message. But we feel like we have our own lane, and our lane is really bringing safety to the street. We have an apparatus side that looks at and trains fleet managers and EVTs to work on the trucks. And then obviously the safety side, where we deal with incident safety officer, which brings the skill sets to the street to help your environment be a little bit safer when we do our operations, and then health and safety and some TIMs with Jack Sullivan. And Jack, I see out there. A lot of great work and a lot of great education that comes out of our organization. A lot of tie-in, man. And we want to help people. We want to help organizations be better. And so, what is safety? Bringing safety to the street. And I talk recently there's been some weirdness with safety out there in the fire service that safety means not being aggressive. And I got to tell you right now, and I'll set the stage, we are all about aggressive firefighting. We want to make it and help create the safest environment you can be in. But our mission is to deliver service, and we're all about saving civilian lives, and we're all about saving firefighter lives. So accident injuries and deaths to our firefighters, man, we got to keep that to a minimum. You know, it's going to happen in the fire service. We know that we deal with an event, a very dangerous environment, but that's who we are and what we do and what we chose to do, right? And our instructors will walk through. Lance is going to talk a little bit about the culture in the fire service, and then Mike's going to really dive into risk versus benefit, and super excited to have this conversation. Kevin, if you want to put up the mission and vision, you know, we went through a strategic planning process where we talked about what we want to do, really what is our mission, and you know, I kind of laid it out there for you with the grassroots of what we're trying to do. But this really talks about, you know, being champion and influence and promote safety, health, and wellness practices and standards for all emergency responders through education, certification, networking, which is important, is what we're doing right now, and strategic partnerships. Those are super, super important. You know, we look at our mission, our vision, and we look at that as a board in the leadership part of this association to continue to drive and figure out what we can do to help the fire service to be better on those calls. We do that a few ways. We can come out and do instruction to you at your facility. But once a year, we have a conference that we do East Coast, West Coast. This year we had it in Phoenix. Next year we're going to be in St. Pete Beach, Florida. St. Pete Beach will be rebuilt and ready for us when we get there. I know the people in that area got beat up twice, man. We had a lot of thoughts and prayers out there for them, but they're rebuilding, and they're gonna make it really, really great to receive us. And so spread the word. Please think about coming. Kevin, if you want to put up the flyer, you know, FDSOA.org. If you haven't seen it, please jump on there. We've got some amazing pre-cons, and we've got some amazing classes with some really, really key instructors. And I see a few of them out there that are going to be participating in this thing. So, you know, we offer a safety officer of the year and a fleet manager of the year award. If you have anybody that you're interested in nominating for these, please get those in. December 1st is our cutoff. And that includes travel and some really cool stuff for the people that win that prize. So if you're interested, please look at that. You know, really the foundation of what we're going to talk about is taking the calculated risk and evaluating the benefits of that risk. And I'm going to make risk super easy for you. Injury and death to our firefighters is the risk. We carry risk to the event. And so we have to do whatever we can to pull off the mission. And we know we have a mission, but we try to create an environment and educate people to make good calculated decisions. And Mike Richardson is going to drive through that. So I'm going to turn it over to Lance. Lance is a Western director for us. Great friend of mine. Both of these guys are great friends of mine, and they're from all over the country. And we find synergy in commonality to what we're doing, and we try to make each other better for our area. And that's what we're trying to do here with our community. So Lance is, and call him Vinny, is been in the fire service for about 23 years. He's got volunteer side because we've got a lot of good following from the volunteer side. Super important to us. So he's got some volunteer experience, and he's a battalion chief in training for Amarillo Fire. And I'm really looking forward to his conversation with us. So Lance, without further ado, my friend, you got the stage.
Thanks, Eric. Welcome to this roundtable discussion, everybody. I'm honored to be able to sit here in front of you and kind of have a conversation about risk versus benefit decision making, and are we really doing that in the fire service today, and kind of what safety looks like from a holistic standpoint, if you will, and we talk about risk. The risk to our firefighters, but you know, let's dive in and really talk about risk and personal risk, operational risk, risk to the public, some things that events can lead to if we aren't on our game and making good decisions about the things that we do. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. I've got a little. Everybody see that? Hopefully.
No.
No. How about now?
There we go. It's coming.
Yep, there we go. Now we can.
Perfect. So that's just going to highlight our new logo real quick with this kind of freshen that up a little bit. And there's a big version of it in the middle, and then of course the Slide Master's got the little version of it down in the left hand corner. But let's have a quick talk here about my views and the views that we bring to you when we teach these classes, and culturally what we're trying to get through as far as a safety culture in the fire service. So whenever I go anywhere and teach, I use this as a kind of a springboard. I say, there's a civil war going on in the fire service right now, and there really has been since the Governor's Island study came out. And we started talking about how and when to apply water, when to raise ladders, and what survivability of victims looks like. And then, of course, you've got folks that are talking about it's not clear till we say it's clear, and then it's the people that are going, we don't do anything that's risky. So Paul Combs kind of drew that. This is shared from of course his archives here, and on one side you've got this Civil War happening. You've got today's fire service must become 100% risk averse culture. I think that culturally and the reputation of the word safety, the FDSOA, that's not where we actually live. And we certainly don't live on the far right of this screen as, are you a wuss or something, get in there and risk everything. What we would like to see is culturally that the fire service bring a common sense approach to what risk is and what the benefits of those risks are. So I think kind of what we ask folks is to try to be intellectually aggressive and not arbitrarily aggressive. Just being aggressive to be aggressive, a lot of times isn't for the best outcomes for the people that we're going to. It's for the best outcomes of ourselves or our egos. I truly feel that way. So I want to talk about what is really truth, and then what's fire service propaganda. So as we dive into this a little bit, everybody's seen some of this propaganda. And safety in the fire service, the stages of safety, hard from the yard. While you're looking for the reset button, we'll be doing the job. Ideally, for what we believe at FDSOA, and I hold strongly to, is that our job is to save lives and property. And then we should make decisions that make us most effective at saving lives and property. And in order to save lives and property, we've kind of got to define what that means to each one of us. Now, every organization is going to be different. Every organization is going to have a risk.
Getting information.
Excuse me?
Keep going. No worries.
Oh, that every organization is going to have a different idea of what that looks like for them, what capabilities they have, and some of the promises that they've made to the community. The idea that if you spray water from the outside, you're somehow more or less of a firefighter, or the inverse being true, that you have to make an interior attack without the benefit of water to rescue people, simply not true. So what I want to ask right now and kind of engage is this. And everybody's seen these shirts that talk about it's worth the risk. The first time I saw one of these shirts, I said, yeah, maybe. And I still feel that way. We feel that way is what, if you can tell me what it is, that's a possibility. But I use this as kind of a snapshot and kind of a lead in. The risk profile of a duplex with 4 cars parked around it at 2 a.m. and a couple bicycles out front should look completely different than an abandoned or derelict structure that simply might have somebody in it. In my organization, we kind of stole law enforcement's terminology in that, and we call it driving force. We don't look for reasons to stay out of buildings. We look for reasons to go in, but we really need a driving force. Do we believe that it's not clear till we say it's clear? Absolutely, we believe that. However, what risk are we willing to put our firefighters in? What risk are we willing to put the public in? Are you blowing through red lights on the way to calls? What happens if you are involved in an accident with a member of the public? Are you wearing your PPE correctly every time? And then the big one for me is seatbelts. The reason that I'm a member of the FDSOA and pursue safety in my career is because very early on, I lost one of my best friends to a seatbelt malfunction in an apparatus, or he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. It was a door malfunction apparatus. And I hold strongly to the beliefs that man, in order for us to be willing to take a risk, we really need to define what that risk is and then find out what that benefit looks like. And by all means, if that's that scenario with a duplex and cars parked in front and we've got that driving force to risk, then by all means, we've got to get in there and do our jobs. But the idea that we can put some of these things on a sliding scale and go, hey, can we control this fire before we just arbitrarily are aggressive with a derelict structure? I think that it culturally should be a conversation worth having. And that we maybe come together and find a middle ground that leans towards common sense. That's all I've got.
So Lance, man, thank you. I think you hit it on the head with trying to figure out what it is. And I think every organization needs to kind of nail that, right? We talk a little bit about, and I was blessed enough to do a podcast with Jeremy Donch from National Fire Radio. And the first time I met him and talked to him before he invited me on a podcast, I really talked about safety sounds like the bad word in the fire service now, man. And it shouldn't be. It should be. Because people are looking at it wrong.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when there's conversation about taking safety out of the 16 firefighter safety initiatives, there's a problem, man. And so we got to define what safety is. And safety is not about not being aggressive. That is not it, man. Safety is saying we're gonna risk our lives when we find the benefit to do that, and that's to save a savable life.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times firefighters get on or actually get off the apparatus and they just act. And recognition prime decision making is one of those things that we look through that and then we just act without truly making a decision. I would like us to see us develop our young people through relationships and training and experience to where when they do something, they actually know why they made a decision to do what it is that they did.
Drive us in, and I don't want to belabor this, but it's really going to drive us in what Mike's going to talk about now. And Mike's another really good friend of mine. He's in the Kentucky area. He's got 38 years combined service as a vet in the in the military and in the fire service. He retired not too long ago as a division chief at training and safety. And this guy he's been a part of a lot of great organizations, including has been a past board member of the FDSOA. He's a great instructor for us. He's got a lot of great insights from a lot of different levels of the fire service. And I look forward to hearing his conversation. Then we'll beat this up a little bit more, and then we'll go into asking you for some questions and open that discussion up to everybody. All you, Mikey.
All righty, Eric, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear, buddy.
You're great.
Okay. Good. So I would like
Not
to start
seeing your
this
screen
off.
yet, though.
Yeah, I'm bringing up the PowerPoint now. It should be coming up.
Here it comes.
Alrighty.
And if everyone can please mute themselves until that'd be great.
There we go. You're on.
Okay. Let me see if I can. Alrighty, how's that? Better or no?
Looks good.
Looks good.
You're
Okay.
That's perfect.
Good.
So I'd like to start off and say thanks to some of the OGs that are here. Recognize Chief Routley, recognize Chief Nam, Chief Sullivan. And I would like to say thanks to those individuals and a lot of others like Dave Dotson, Rich Gazaway, who did a lot of work and paved the way for us. I'm only here because there were a lot smarter people that came before me and were willing to share their experiences and knowledge. So thanks very much to everyone who set this up. And obviously, a lot of this work is built off of Dave Dotson's original work with the Incident Safety Officer program. So thanks to everyone once again for paving the way. And we've got a limited amount of time because obviously we could spend 8 hours talking about this topic just by itself. So I'm just going to hit some key high points here. This comes from the FDSOA website, so if you'd like to jump on there and check it out, you can. And this gets down to having some type of system for success. Lance talked about culture. Do we want to have a culture of extinguishment? Do we want to have a culture of safety? I would argue we should have a culture of success because to me, success is accomplishing the mission and then going home in the same condition, hopefully, that we showed up in. So to me, I like to focus on outcomes and that outcome being success. And that's, if need be, we will risk our life for the public. But at the same time, too, as leaders in the fire service, we owe it to those that we lead to make sure that we're taking responsible actions. And once again, the ultimate goal being success. And both Lance and Eric hit on it earlier. We all raised our right hand and took an oath and said, we will risk our life to save a life. And there's no question, if we show up and it's without doubt there are victims, civilian victims present, we're going to do above and beyond anything to try to save those lives. The next one is we may risk our lives in an educated and calculated manner for savable property. We have to remember, not everyone has insurance. There are some things that, like we like to say, everything can be replaced, but we should be capable of taking a reasonable risk to save property. But once again, I've never spoken to a homeowner that said, I expect you to die today trying to save my stuff. As a matter of fact, I've had homeowners yelled and screamed at us, what are you doing? Get out of the house, let it burn. It's not worth your life. So we have to look for that middle ground where is it savable property? If it is, then yes, we should be taking calculated, educated actions. And then the bottom line is we will not risk our lives for lives or property that are already lost. And I hate to say it, there's times when we show up, it's a losing hand. If you've ever gambled in your life, one of the hardest lessons to learn is when is it time to fold and walk away. And there are incidents where when we show up, everything is stacked and set against us. And if we choose to engage, we're going to pay a severe price for that. So this is common basic risk management. I would hope and think everyone in the fire service would be up to speed with it, but I still see things and I have to question, and we'll hit an example here in a second. If we look at this, we need to do good, effective size up, incorporate our risk management, figure out our strategy, come up with an incident action plan, initiate that through our objectives. And then this is a cyclical process. And a huge part of that is forecasting. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we have some key things over here too. And these are things typically when these things are not in place, then we're going to see problems and issues. Another system that we could look at, and the key to this is that we have a system. Is there one system that works for everyone in every situation? No. So I operated with a lot of different systems depending on the situation, but we need to start off with Rich Gazaway's situational awareness, which we also call size up. I like situational awareness because it takes it to another level and it breaks it down. We have to observe, we have to comprehend, and then we have to forecast. Typically, where I've seen where we're in trouble is we show up and we see things, but do we really understand? Going back to Dave Dotson, we always hear we're on scene, we have heavy smoke showing. Give me volume, velocity, density, and color so that I can hopefully understand, is this an incipient stage fire? Is this a post flashover fire? Is this vent limited? Is this free burning? those things have significance and mean something to us in terms of the risk that's present. And then once again, predicting. And then from there, we need to come up with a plan. And Lance hit on this. We have to make decisions. We can't just take default actions. If we're just going to show up and jump off the fire truck and run and start doing things because that's what we always do, then we're going to base our outcome on luck, because at that point, skill's not involved. And then part of that is our risk benefit. And then finally, we're going to act, and then we're going to see if what we're doing is working. One of the problems that I have and I've seen in the fire service is that a lot of times safety is a scapegoat for basically incompetence. We have people that aren't capable of doing the job, and if we're not careful, then we're being safe can kind of turn into a scapegoat. So we have to be honest with ourselves. When we show up at an incident, are we showing up with the A team or the C team? If we've got the C team, we have to plan our actions accordingly. Going back to Lance brought up decision making. The UK and European Fire Service have done a lot of research on decision making. Some folks in the American Fire Service are very up to speed on this. Some people have never seen or heard it before. Chief Sabrina Cohen-Hatton is a really good advocate and a really good researcher. And if anybody needs the links to any of this, just send us a message and we can get it to you. And that research basically is discovered, at least in the UK Fire Service, and I believe it's reasonable in the American Fire Service, we're not really making decisions that often. First thing we talked about is situation assessment, then plan formulation, then plan execution. Their research has shown that we show up, do some limited assessment, but then we immediately go to executing. And I believe today this is being driven by things like the time belongs to the victims, it doesn't belong to us. I agree with that. We need to show up and be proficient. But is it worth saving 3 to 5 seconds? And that ultimately is going to lead to a disaster. Whereas if we would have done a better size up rather than just running as fast as we could to get around the building, or if we've actually taken the time to say, hey, what could be the worst case scenario here? Because could that be what we're going to be dealing with? And if that's the case, what do we need to do to try to make sure we're prepared for that? But once again, I used to joke with my crews. I said, when you get out of the cab, don't engage the autopilot button. And that wasn't directed towards driving the fire apparatus. That was directed towards them taking a default action. I think we've all seen an 1 3/4 pulled for an offensive fire attack on a commercial building. And we're asking the question, why would you pull an 1 3/4 on this? This is a 2.5. This is a deck gun. This is an elevated master stream. Or why are we even looking at going offensive? This is an obvious defensive fire. And it's because what have we done at 99% of the fires? We pull an 1 3/4 and we go offensive. So please don't use the autopilot. Let's make a conscious, informed decision and not just follow habits. Okay? We get down to risk and benefit. We want to make sure that we understand risk. A risk is a danger or a hazard, but the key here is danger or hazard. The risk comes from interacting with that hazard. So obviously with the fire, we could get burned. If we're not in a position to get burned, we no longer have that danger or hazard. So then we get into risk management. Collapse. Can we stop a building from falling down? Chances are no. So once again, how are we going to deal with that from a risk management standpoint? And we have to once again understand, obviously, we could have an incipient stage fire, totally different risk profile than a vent limited fire that's ready to backdraft the second we open the box. Likewise, we could have a building that could stand there for hours under fire attack and nothing's going to happen. And we could have lightweight construction that could literally fail in minutes. Totally different risk profiles. Another big thing here, once again, is forecasting or predicting. Are we getting ahead of the curve? Because we need to think not just about risk at the moment, but what risks are we going to face in the future? Time and timelines are very important. Risk, there's tons of risk, and we need to be thinking about risks appropriate to what we're doing. Obviously, we could have risk for fire versus risk for hazmat versus risks just for anything. We want to make sure that we're thinking about this in advance. If we have proper preparation, that's professional development, that's training, that's education, that's secondhand experience. If we do good assessments on arrival, then these risks should not surprise us. But it amazes me how many times when you hear about an incident that didn't go well, someone says unexpectedly blank happened. Gordon Graham has a great saying, predictable is preventable. I believe most of what we deal with in the fire service is predictable if we do our due diligence. The benefits, the big one obviously is life safety, but we need to remember that's both civilian and firefighter life safety. Do we put one before the other? No, they're equal in my opinion. It's just important. Injured and dead firefighters can't save civilians. So if we're throwing bodies at an incident and those bodies become injured or killed, they're not going to affect the rescue. We can't positively change that outcome. Then we go to property. Is it savable property? Is it going to be savable property by the time we get everything in place, get hose line stretched, get ventilation, get fire tack going? Once again, I don't know any civilians that want us dying for their stuff. So is it actual valuable savable property? Okay. And taking a quick look at this video, what is the benefit here? There's no civilian lives to save. That property is not savable. So every risk we take here is for what? This goes back to what is it? It here is nothing, okay? Look at the level of risk we're taking. Could we be burned? Okay? Now let's take a look at another example. Have we increased our risk management? Yes, we're now wearing full PPE. So we've got full gear on. We're breathing air. And in this case, that was a really good thing. Now, I want you to think about what would have happened in that previous video if that would have happened with those individuals standing there. Totally different outcome. And I hate to say it, a lot of times we are unintentionally successful. And that can lead to a lot of problems and issues because we're doing things we shouldn't, but we're getting away with them, no negative consequences. So therefore, hey, we can do this. Now we've started to use the reach of our stream, which is good, rather than being right up on it. So we're trying to manage the fire risk. But this firefighter is also located directly behind the vehicle. What happens now if the bumper comes off? What happens now if the struts on the rear hatch come off? So we know ideally we should be attacking this fire from an angle and not directly from the front of the rear. So bottom line is, we need to ask ourselves, both of these cases, there was no it. We're not going to save a life. We're not going to save property. We're basically going to stabilize the incident. So how much of a hurry should we be in? How much risk should we be willing to take? And just an example on controlling risk. Obviously, at a fire, our best option is to put it out. We can't always do that. So we need to be honest with ourselves. Reduce it. Can we knock it down from the exterior and then transition to an interior attack? Adapt, utilizing full PPE. Are we doing that? Or as we saw in the video, are we taking unnecessary risk? Transfer. My department I retired from just had a plane crash about in the middle of the district. Needless to say, the first person I'm calling is the airport fire department, because they know everything about planes. They're bringing foam. They're bringing expertise. That's going to help me reduce or manage my risk so we can transfer some of that to other agencies. And then ultimately, if it comes down to it, our option sometimes is to do nothing but avoid it. Once again, not risk aversion out of the gate, but if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. So that's what I had on that. I think now we can open it up to comments or questions.
Yeah, Mikey, let me just start, man. If you would put that risk management plan up there, and then we can open it up.
Yes,
because we there's a lot of good things that both of you guys talked about that I want to open it up for discussion with the group.
Sorry, Mike, I just removed it. So if you can share it again.
Okay, no problem. I'll jump back in here.
So what Mike's going to bring up is really what we've identified as the FDSOA risk management plan. It's probably similar to what you guys have. Some have them, some don't. I had this once again. I had this discussion with Jeremy, and he goes, "Man, how valuable is it if it's just a PDF hanging on a wall?" And I go, "You're absolutely right, man, because it should be taught at all levels." I come from a Phoenix Metro auto aid system that has, covers the whole Maricopa County, and it's got about 35 different departments and districts that all work together seamlessly, same regional academies. And the plan is from the lowest level recruit when they start to understand what it is, all the way up to supported by the fire chief and every position in between, because you have to be working off the same sheet of music and you got to understand what it is. And ours talks about educating, calculated. That's exactly what Mike was talking about there. Let's educate ourselves. Let's understand. Let's read. Let's look at the latest studies and let's understand. And reading smoke is one of those big ones. Reading buildings is another big one that we have to drive into. And it's super important that everybody looks at this and understands it in great detail at all levels. So I just wanted to say that, and then let's open it up to the group. And I know Kevin's going to manage some of that. Let's get some questions or some comments.
Yeah, so I'll kind of to build on that, Eric, and if I'll kind of stop the sharing here, Mike. Thanks for bringing that back up. This is now kind of meant to be an open forum. As you saw, we did have a Zoom bomber. It's always kind of fun. Those were big in COVID, but we ask if you got a question, raise your physical or digital hand, ask it to the team. And this is really meant to kind of be back and forth. We got at least 24 minutes. Maybe we'll go up to 30, 40, kind of, and feel free to jump off. But would anybody like to give a response, a thought based on what we just heard from Lance, Mike, and Eric? Or do I have to volunteer someone? But it's really going to be meant to be for all of you. So anybody want to raise your physical or digital hand or just come off mute?
Hey, Kevin, this is Chief Hall, Mount Bellevue Fire Department.
Hey, Chief, how you doing?
Good afternoon, and thank you guys for this opportunity. I think that early on in this, when we said, making safety not be the bad guy or whatever, but it's trying to get rid of the egos and I don't know quite how to put it, between, first in, last out, burned up bunker gear, the soot on the face. I still don't think we've come past that. And my confusion still is at what point, training, combination of training and education, and ours is from a volunteer side mainly, but we have all these plans, but getting it out into reality, what are we not doing? What am I not doing to change these behaviors? I mean, we've already had a cancer diagnosis that was actually accepted by workman's comp, which went back to the lack of PPE, lack of training. And then when you correct guys, for example, we were moving ladders out of a truck last night. 2 guys didn't have gloves on, and it's you tell them that's, and they just kind of look at you like it's, So that's my 2 cents worth, and maybe open it up to the group to get some pointers or some feedback. Or
yeah, man, I'll start the response off, Chief, and I appreciate you bringing that up because we're our own worst enemies, and I think that all of us as leaders in the fire service have been one of those people at some point in our career. I can tell you, when I was a company officer in tier, man, I was aggressive, and when my IC wanted to go defensive, what did I say? Hey, give me 2 more minutes. I got this thing. Right. And so, we have to realize that, and then, train our leaders at all levels to be watching that and giving good input and good feedback. And buying into some of this stuff may be difficult for some. I get it. And muscle memory is really tough in the fire service. But, we can't stop. We got to keep pushing. And I think firefighters become more vulnerable when they have somebody personally affected by one of these things. And I know I have that happen to me, Lance, Mike, same way. But I just want to start that for discussion.
So,
Lance, Mike, or somebody else want to jump in?
yeah. So, Chief, I'll tell you this, and it's kind of a simple, maybe anecdotal way to look at anything. I believe that if you take your young members and you get them to believe just these few words, and it's that good luck teaches bad habits. And that the luckier we are, the more we reinforce bad behaviors. And that if we can start from the beginning you can actually watch young members of your organization start to influence the older members of your organization if you can get them to believe that, hey, we can't just be lucky, we have to be good. Otherwise, we're reinforcing things that we shouldn't reinforce. And I think it's a cultural problem throughout the fire service. But that would be my suggestion, is to start young and make them your change agents.
Anybody want to add to that?
I see Jay Gordon. Go for it.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
Mike Amese, you're next.
Okay,
Chief,
thanks.
good to see you.
Thanks very much. I'm one of the real old guys here. I've been fighting this fight for a long time, and you know, I think you hit the nail right on the head with the presentations so far. I think, you know, and one of the things I've got to add is I've worked in several different fire departments in different parts of the U.S. and Canada, and the equilibrium line on acceptable risk varies a lot. That's part of organizational culture. And you know, my personal line hasn't changed, but I've been in fire departments where the line has been in different places. But I think they're kind of preaching to the choir, because everybody I see signed in here is already a disciple. I think we understand the appropriate balance between risk and benefit. The real thing we have to do is to deal with that cultural question and get everybody in our fire departments to understand it, and not look at us as the squealing lunatic fringe who are afraid of fire. One of the key things to me is to build that base of experience, because we make those judgments. The judgments we make at the incident scene are based on experience. What we've experienced, what we've read, what we've seen, what we've heard about. And we have to, you know, we can't gain all the experience we need personally. So I think it's very important to study fires, to study situations that have gone wrong, to put those into the brain, so that when, you know, we encounter something like that, we can say, well, I haven't seen this before, but I've heard about it, I've read about it, this fire, that fire. You know, there's Frank Lieb and Billy Goldfeder put out a book just recently on 30 fires you should know, which is based right on that. You know, the building the experience from significant incidents that you can use as benchmarks in making decisions. So, you know, I think this is a great discussion. It's one of my favorite subjects, and really, to me, the challenge is just to get everybody to that mature decision-making point.
Thanks, Jay. Mike Amese, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm one of Chief Routley's disciples. He was my boss for the last 10 years. The cultural issue is something where we need to make choices. Are we going to keep burying our brothers and sisters based on, you know, risk a little for to save a little, risk a lot to save a lot? It's a cultural issue. And how do we define our culture? Culture is, you know, the definition of our culture. What risk are we willing to tolerate for our firefighters to be exposed to, and risk not coming back? It's balancing on a high wire, and we need to really address some of those issues, and just stop burying some of our brothers for some ridiculous decisions that are being.
100% agree, Mike. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to jump on that?
Good afternoon, Eric and staff. Jim Morgan from Pine Top, Arizona.
Hey, buddy.
A wonderful discussion. You know, it's, for me, it seems like we're slow to act, and we've got organizations such as yours and iChiefs that really have kind of paved the way to get in front of some of the dynamic things that our firefighters are facing today, like solar battery storage and EV vehicles and all the things that we're seeing develop, but our curriculums don't keep that same pace to be able to teach our young firefighters how to identify this risk management. So any thoughts about how we can be a little more aggressive in getting those curriculum changes to again combat some of these things, because technology is really outpacing our ability to stay in front of this.
Well, I'll tell you, it's the pace of change for us in the fire service is astronomical right now. And I think what we're doing here today and what we're about as an association is to try to connect people and network and people are working on things all over this country that you may need help with. It's connecting the dots to help you with your operational performance and help you improve your organization. There's things that we could do better here in Scottsdale, and you bet I'm looking at other places to see how we can do it better. Paul, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I don't want to toot my horn, but the only little thing I've done on my own, and Chief Routley's helped us, is I made a podcast called Emergency Traffic, and we only look at line of duty deaths. And we typically try to look at the decision-making processes that were involved. We use the recommendations from NIOSH or whatever agency, but it's a way to reach the younger firefighters because it's a podcast, because I know they never want to read the reports. So we've been doing it for 3 years now with some success to those that listen to it. But it's exactly this. We did yesterday, or we just recorded one yesterday. It was a fire in Chicago in 2012, multifamily dwelling. And I mean, the decision-making process of why command sent the guys. Everybody was out, but the guys went in, and we debated it amongst ourselves when on the podcast. Like, would you go in? Wouldn't you go in? What would you do? And it happened so fast. We need to build that experience, and one way to do it is a podcast or these kind of seminars. So kudos to you guys for putting this on. This is great.
Paul, here's the thing, man. We're creating discipleship, right? And everybody on this webinar needs to spread the good word, man, and challenge the culture in the current fire service, and let's just make the overall fire service better, because it's going to help our firefighters at the end of the day. And it's going to 100% help our civilians. Mikey, were you going to say something?
Yes, in response to a couple of things. All of your new firefighters have this thing glued to their face a large part of the day. The key is for us to get them to be looking at the things that we would like them to be looking at. And that gets into the why. Someone else brought it up and brought a comment like, how do we get people to buy in this? How do we get the disciples? How do we get the followers? If they don't get the why, it's probably not going to be happening. And that why is not going to just get built on an incident scene when you're telling someone, hey, you need to do this, or hey, you shouldn't do that. So through our professional development programs, I wore the training and safety hat. I was constantly trying to build that why. It's not that you have to do this. It's not that you should do this. This is why this is important to do this or not do this. So I think with those newer folks, if we can engage them outside of incidents and have those conversations, and we also talk about at FDSOA embedded safety. Safety should be with everyone in the organization. And if we can get the company officers and the chief officers to understand the why behind the things we're trying to do, I think we're going to have better success. It also goes back to the carrot and the stick. At some point as an ISO, you may have to swing a stick, but you're probably going to have a lot more success with the carrot and encouraging and rewarding people than you are threatening them or etc. So.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Mikey, because, it's important to me, and we train every new company officer all the way up to the fire chief on incident safety in our organizations, because they're the ones on every call, right? That when you talk about embedded safety, that's important. And so, I always tell people we shouldn't be code enforcers, man, because that gives safety a bad word, right? We should not be code enforcers. We should create a good culture and be cultural reinforcers. We got to reinforce the good things that are happening, right? And we got to challenge people to do better. We just do. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah.
Girls? I see you, Monica.
Hi, how you doing? Sable, New York, Long Island. No, not New York City, 30 miles the other way. When you have one of the largest career departments in your area, and we have quite a few in our volunteer department that are FDNY. Very aggressive gentlemen, a lot of experience. To tell them that we might need to slow it down or back out, it's tough to do. I try to set by example by having full turnout gear. Now I'm the ISO for the department. I attempt to do all the things that a safety officer would do. And what's tough is when they get there, it's like autopilot. They see a burning building, they stretch the line, they forcible entry, go in and hit it. Well, we had a commercial fire. You guys familiar with taxpayers are?
Yes.
Okay. So we had a taxpayer fire on Main Street, Salem, USA. 3 occupancies, 1 building. Building was built around the early 1900s. What had happened was one of the occupancies, which was a restaurant, was undergoing remodeling. So all the exterior walls and interior corridors were open with all the conduit of electrical, pipes, the whole 9 yards. Apparently, there were workers in there prior to the fire. We haven't gotten the fire investigators report as far as cause of origin, but I would safely assume that maybe somebody left something hot, maybe there were soldering pipes, whatever. Long story short, so this thing goes up and it gets right into the cock loft. Now, the cock loft is common between the 3 occupancies, and it was a very windy day that day. This thing takes off. When the first arriving chief shows up, top of the building is already flames barreling out the roof. Entry was made. Extinguishment was starting in the first occupancy. And I was kind of questioning, like, first of all, this building looks like it could probably drop and collapse anytime, especially it also had a parapet, which we all know that they have a tendency of dropping down exactly where the firefighters are in front of a taxpayer. So I kind of questioned the strategy, thought maybe something should change. But at that point, the chief decided, because they saw sky inside and thought that, okay, this thing's starting to come down. So they evacuated the building and we went to master stream operations, actually 2. We were pouring probably over a period of 30 minutes, about 400 gallons of H2O on this thing. The thing that happened is when they got it pretty well knocked, it had a tin interior ceiling. I don't know if any of you guys ever tried pulling these. They're not exactly easy, take a lot of effort. We didn't have a vent roof because it's self-vented. So they were trying to find any pockets. And of course, this thing had gone across the cock loft. It had some auto exposure to an exterior building, but only under the soffits. And they were able to get that. My point was, we need to get these guys out. And they did. They changed from, aggressive, offensive approach to then defensive, and evacuated the building with all firefighters. At that point, too, I saw fire coming out of the mortar joints on the parapet, and they suggested very vehemently, we need to back everybody out of a potential collapse zone, which they did. But then what caught my eye was we also had a crew in the rear of the building, and when everything was pretty much settled down, they wanted to send another crew in to mop up the rear of the building where there were still hot pockets of fire. And going from, a defensive strategy back to the offensive strategy, I never think that's a good idea, especially with potential structure damage by the fire and our water application. But if you're going to do that, I said, it's got to be very a small crew, monitoring guys from outside of the 3 inside. And next time I looked around, there were at least 8 to 9 guys in there, all trying to pull the same area of stuff. So fire went out. Nobody got hurt. Everybody was like, patting each other on the back. Great job, good job. And they did. Their aggressive effort was amazing. We're a very aggressive department. Like I said, we have quite a few career firefighters with us. But what the department meeting, I have to give an ISO report. So I gave a post-incident analysis of what I saw from the outside and listening to radio communications and such. I said to them, I'm not too sure if the incident command or the interior officers realized, but this was an unstable building from the get-go. Like I said, when we first arrived, everyone pulled up to flames to the roof on a building, about 100 years old. And then the other thing was, I said, there was another big faux pas. When they evacuated the building, there were 2 guys left inside that nobody knew about. And they were on a line. They said, when I talked to them later, outside crews started pulling the hose from the outside and pulled the hose away from them. I said, nothing from nothing, but this is a life-threatening situation. First of all, the hose is their exit way out. Secondly, where they were hitting hot spots and stuff near the middle of the building, now they have no hose line. And most importantly, part of their crew went out, and nobody knew that they were still in there. Fortunately, they did get out. One of the members was a retired FDNY from the squad. So he kept his head, he told his probie, come on, we're gonna go this way. I remember how we got in, and they got out. And there was something said earlier, if the fire goes out, nobody gets hurt, everybody says, hey, great job. And then when I noted the potential for catastrophic issues of a possible LODD, I was like, guys, you got to remember something. And oh, by the way, building's unoccupied. No one's in the building. So I said, at this point, firefighters don't really even think about life first, then property. They only think about, for the most part, getting the fire out at any cost. And I think that's what's a big contributor to a lot of LODDs is that in some cases, sometimes we go too far where we shouldn't have been in the first place, and then shit happens.
Hey,
And then we
Chief,
say,
thank you
"What's
so much
going
for
on?"
those comments. We're hitting time, so I just want to continue to make sure everyone's getting something to say. So thank you so much. I see Ray K and then Bob Dogali. So just kind of go around the horn to continue to build on what Chief just said, as well as any other comments. So we'll go Ray K, then Bob Delegate.
Real quick, one thing that we do in Raleigh is I do gear inspections at each station. It's just spot gear inspections. Something in the morning doesn't take too long. But what I've really found on the cultural change of it, it gives me a chance out there to talk to the companies. I see the companies I see several companies a month. I've got a unique perspective. Both my grandfather and father were here. So from the 50s, the changes that our department's gone through from the 50s, 70s, when I came in the 90s, and then I got 2 sons on the job right behind me. So that kind of put me in the safety mindset because I don't see them get hurt. But just getting out there and talking to them and bringing up stuff that y'all bringing up on what's going on in the department, what's going on in safety. And, you get bombarded by, especially I've been a captain there for 14 years now. I get bombarded with why are we doing this, why are we doing that? But the why, I think one of the chiefs mentioned the why on it. Just getting out there as an ISO and talking to them seems to bring out good conversations along with our professional development side, because we are behind on bringing it throughout the ranks on the professional development side.
Thanks, Ray. Bob? Hey, Bob, we can't hear you. Maybe if they're in your audio at the microphone there's like a little caret that goes up. You might need to click that for 1 or 2 times to get the right one. So we'll give you another little bit. Sorry, unfortunately, we can't hear you.
I know we have something really great to say too.
I know, Bob would love Bob, the caret next to the audio that's like a little upwards. If you click that and then make sure you're on the right speaker.
But while he's doing that, the why is important. The why is important. Talking to people is very important. And there's a lot of firefighters out there that may not feel they're in a safe area, but they don't speak up. because they don't feel like they have a voice and they're being led by an informal leader that, okay, I guess this is what we're supposed to do. Right. And having those open discussions and open dialogue with them is super helpful in the experience. And, I had this conversation with somebody talking about, I like to get to yes when I do things. And, a lot of people out there may go, hey, we're not doing that. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. And following that up with a why to help them understand gains their support back, right? Helps them to understand, and you're mentoring them along the way. And it's the mentorship piece that we may be struggling with in some areas, that we don't put our arm around our new firefighters sometimes and carry them along with us. I think some of these, put the phone up in the air, some of these things that we're dealing with right now is life distractions that are pulling us away from doing some of those things. Just a thought.
So real quick on that, I think that if we would go back to a model that I kind of came up with, and I certainly gave my guys whenever I was riding a truck, like if our young members understood that they were accountable to the older members and the officers, but the officers were also accountable to the younger members, and that circle of accountability went both directions. And then when somebody was doing something that was opposite of what we know are the right things, that you can at very least have a discussion about it, and that accountability goes both ways. And so that maybe, hey, why'd we do that, boss? That doesn't become a because I said so, but that becomes a either chance to explain why we maybe went outside our normal risk, or an opportunity to go, I might have been wrong there, kid. Let's try to do better next time.
Bob,
Tech person, I put it in the chat.
Okay.
This is Gordon. Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah. Well, Kevin's looking up his comments.
Yeah, I was just, one of the things we have to do is to look at what influences our firefighters and officers at every level. And, if they go to FDIC, they come back, completely charged with the go get 'em, take every possible risk approach, which sells tickets to FDIC and always bothers me. And we tend to represent the opposite pole. We have to tune our message so that we're not always the one who comes across as saying, well, you shouldn't do that. You got to be careful. We have to balance that with saying, you need to be well trained. You need to practice, because to do this job safely, you have to be good at doing it. The people who worked with me in Montreal know that, number one, I was a safety zealot, and number two, I was a zealot of, we came here to put the fire out and get the job done. So let's be good at doing that. We just have to do that safely. And I think that comes across in the way we as safety officers present ourselves. We're not anti-firefighting. We're pro smart firefighting, skilled firefighting, doing it safely, getting the job done.
And they can exist together. Aggressive firefighting and safety can 100% exist together. And you get the job done, you save lives, and you save your own lives. And that's important. Do you have his comment, Kevin?
I'm not seeing it, Bob, if it was an email or a comment, unless I missed it. So if you could type something in the chat, or you can even hold up a note, typing it. Okay, great. Yeah, please type it. So we are past the hour, but I'd say we're going to keep going. We still got 71 people here. I'd say we're going to keep rolling for another 10 minutes. I see M. Frappy, the chief, you had some book there. I'm not sure it was what that was, but I'm also seeing Christopher Nam. You're another person that I've had the fortune of being able to talk and interact with and learn from over the years. I haven't heard from you yet.
Chris, I've never met you in person, man, but we've talked by email because you're coming out to teach. So thanks for being here, man. I'd love to hear.
You're certainly welcome. Well, I've been just listening quietly in the background. And first and foremost, I think everything that has been presented in the conversation here are spot on. Having had the opportunity to teach nationally as much as I do, it's just interesting to note that the problematic issues that we're identifying are all right in front of us. How we address them and how do we get the message across continues to be some of the significant challenges. I mean, we're trying to identify that magic bullet, and unfortunately, I don't truly believe there is one specific way to get it done. But I'll say this, I think the American Fire Service is functionally illiterate. We know enough to get by, but not nearly enough to understand all of the connecting the dots, how and why things are working. We go into a very programmatic way of doing business, unfortunately. And I think we've got to reprogram that whole emphasis. We've got to reprogram and maybe reboot some of our old school principles through the combined element of experience that many here in this group are exemplifying, and get that message across out there in a manner that's consistent, that relies on discipline, accountability, and what standards and performance and excellence really is. I mean, and that's part of the problem. We have a fire service that is being programmed to think a certain way at a variety of different levels, and then sometimes they get reprogrammed, and then suddenly they default back to the way they're doing business in their locales, their regions, and so forth. And I think that fundamentally, it's a leadership issue. It's leadership at the departmental level, at the highest level, but truly, when we talk about making a difference relative to risk, it's what's happening in the street. And when we have individuals at command or at the company level that don't comprehend, don't understand, have this degree of illiteracy, it gets lost to the woods, because they have their perspective of it, but they don't have anything to default back to it. But yet we have example upon example. We have all of the great insights that were provided here, the LODDs. I'll give you one quick example here. I was out teaching at a state conference, and this is a few years ago, and I've introduced it into most of my programs currently. But I asked all of the officers in the room. So I had mostly 4 and 5 bugled chief officers, about 300 plus, to stand up. And I asked them a series of questions, and and if they could not reply in an affirmative, they needed to sit down. The second question, and again, 4 and 5 bugle chiefs, have you read or at least been familiar with at least 5 line of duty deaths? 98% of that room sat down, and that's a pretty consistent number. It's between 90 and almost to 100 in terms of individuals that are just not comprehending, not reading, not being aware of the insights, the campaigns, the programs, and again, it's regarding any of the organizations that are out there. We see this pendulum swinging back and forth, and what we don't have is this high degree of consistency and saturation that's applicable to the largest metro-sized department or the smallest rural department in terms of the message that we're providing. But we've got to keep moving forward in these related elements here. But again, as Mike talked about, we end up defaulting back to, localized actions and things that are always programmed in. But a lot of good efforts being presented here, and I look forward to how we collectively move the ball forward, because we definitely need it. We definitely need it.
Chris, I appreciate that, man, and I'm so thankful you jumped on. When I was at the Life Safety Summit, and we were having this conversation of the forefathers, and Gordon's one of those, of the 16 safety initiatives, how they thought they were going to cut line of duty deaths by 50%. And I said, well, man, if our environment hadn't changed like it has in the last 20 years, that may have been possible. Right? I mean, fires are burning hotter and faster. And I think that brings up the intensity and the priority of what we're talking about, that we have less time to think things through. And we've got to be educated when we get to the scene and figure it out faster, right? We got to process faster. But to do that, you got to train. And you got to understand what you're getting into. What else, guys? Girls? Monica, you still on there?
Hey, Eric.
Yeah, Mike.
Real quick, there was a good point brought up. And Mark Kehoe at the conference is going to do a great job talking about after action or incident reviews, and a lot of people been hitting on that. And I think a key there is if we're not actually looking at and evaluating, there's a saying, If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, or you can't improve it. So if we're not objectively looking at our calls and runs and then doing something afterwards, but another great point here was how we do it. When we bring everyone together in the fire department and somebody's going to get up there and it's, hey, you screwed this and hey that. I never could stand when we said they were critiques, because a lot of them turn into that and it turns into a negative thing. In some cases, we're better off doing informal tailboards. We're better off having those one-on-one conversations, because then people don't have that peer pressure that I'm going to have to stand up in front of everybody and admit that I screwed up or did something wrong. So I think we need to have some type of program where we are doing after actions, whatever you want to call them, but also vary in how we do it. Because I think a lot of times the big formal things cause more issues and problems than they're worth. So,
Mike, thanks for bringing that up. And Austin, you're next. You know, when Mike just brought that up about Keogh's class, what Mark Keogh is trying to do in his program is not pass blame, not pin it on one individual, but look at the system. Look at the system. Is it education? Is the equipment? Is how we've trained to respond to those things? You know, what was the conversation before? So it spreads that layer of liability across the organization and says, who ultimately, how do we fix this? Not who did this. How do we fix this so it doesn't happen again? Because that gets a bad connotation to fire service about looking for blame, root cause analysis, looking for blame. We need to look at a systems approach to these things. We're pretty complicated in how we deliver service. Austin.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. From West Elgin, Ontario, Canada, from the Great Right North up here. So
awesome.
I've kind of taken over the role of doing safety in our department. We're definitely a younger department, I would say, as in our age range. We're kind of that transition era of the world. In Ontario, we're kind of fortunate for training wise that we have the province is mandated by 2026. Every firefighter in Ontario has to be fully qualified to be on the job. That's full-time or volunteer. So that's level 1, level 2 in hazmat at a minimum. And then if 20% of your job you're doing apparatus operation, then you got to be qualified in that position. So we're definitely there's been a lot of challenges with that, but we've seen an increase in safety with that, because every firefighter, no matter volunteer, full-time, paid on call, has to have that education. So we have lots of regional fire schools coming online, which is great. But we've still noticed, at least up here, the fire departments, and a lot of them are tied with municipal departments, it's kind of the redheaded stepchild and they kind of get forgotten. So we've been working really hard to try and get that education to firefighters and get the procedures. And we have, it's called Section 21, and it's actual guidance notes from our version of OSHA specifically for the fire service. So we've been really focusing on trying to get that and push fire safety. And even at our local academy, one of the major first one is just a week of just safety and safety on the fireground, and we're really trying to push that to the next generation and everyone coming in. So it's good to see that positive change. We got a long way to go, but it's definitely a positive influence we're seeing.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And that sounds like work, buddy. That sounds like work, right?
Yeah.
And it's what I tell people. Don't do easy, because the most fruitful things that come out of life is the work that's put into it. And this takes work.
Always do the job no one else wants to do.
All right, so we are 13 minutes past, but I think we're going to go for maybe another 5 minutes. We still got 59 people here, which is just awesome to show just the value. So again, this is still open. This is meant to be for all of you. Do you have a comment? Do you have a question? We got Lance, Eric, Mike here to respond, but also others in the audience who would provide such great value.
We're here to learn from each other. What good things we want to talk about.
One person I see on the screen, I see you, Kane Nixon, looking all dapper today per usual. I'm looking at you. What kind of comments or questions you got that you could bring with us today?
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for calling me out. This is a really good conversation, and I'm really encouraged to see everyone on here with it sounds like similar stories. I've had conversations recently about this and this culture, subculture against safety. And really what I think we all need to just be aware of is that there's folks in our fire service that, they, anybody that's against safety, I think that they just aren't understanding what is motivating our work and why we care so much really about people going home. And if we can get a hold of those folks and give them our perspective and talk more about maybe, building construction and strategy and tactics and things like that, that we're not averse to taking risk. It's just there's a difference between carelessness and recklessness. And we really, I believe in aggressive firefighting. The statistics and data shows that, the earlier the water, the better. We can cool the environment. We can increase survivability in those spaces. So I'm all about it, but I think intentional intensity is what's important. Just jumping off the truck and running into an untenable environment is reckless. Thinking that because you don't wear your seatbelt on the way to the fire is going to make you a more impactful firefighter when you get there is just reckless. So I'm excited to see that, everybody on here, and I think it's good to see that we're all pointed in the same direction. So just need to keep the conversations going, and I don't think it's wise for us to turn our backs on anybody that's challenging us. I think we need to engage with those folks and ask them what their perspective is. That's the biggest thing. We're all at the same table, so let's have the conversation.
Kane, thanks for bringing that up. And by the way, the I Care shirt fit great, man. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
The reason we put our a statement on the front web page, and we created our risk management plan is because we didn't want people to think we were trying to create a different environment that wouldn't allow firefighters to be firefighters. Right? We all came into this business to do a job, and so the goal for us is to do it as long as we can to be as successful at it. And that's what we're talking about. Lance, you want to add to that? You're muted. There
Yeah,
you
so that's a great point. I wrote an article. I was asked to write an article about Brian's death several years ago, and the direction I took from that was, you mentioned seatbelts, and the amount of time that you save by putting on seatbelts, the amount of time that it takes to swing your jacket onto your arms. Like, you can buckle the seatbelt and nobody's going to fires without their boots on. And so when you talk about risk versus benefit, you break it down to something that's specific like that, like seatbelts. Man, I'm just not positive that 9 to 10 seconds was worth Brian's life. And I think that if he had to go back and look at that, the same thing. In that same regard, when you bring that to fire, I got to listen to David Griffin talk multiple times. We just got back from Charleston, but one of the things that sticks out to me that he said, it was in the deal that you and I were in, EV. He said, none of my buddies would have wanted to die for a couch. And you just think about it, that's one of the largest fire tragedies we've had. I've studied that fire. I've looked at it. I remember I was young in the fire service. I remember watching it happen. And to hear a guy that was there say, none of my friends would have wanted to die for a couch. It hit a place in my soul, I think, because I feel the same way about seatbelts. Like, nobody's saying don't do the job. We're just saying, man, know why you're making the decisions that you're making.
Hey, Eric. Yeah, something, and it was a great point that brought up there by we have to recognize if you have someone in your fire department, we have excessive risk takers. They're usually known as extreme athletes, people that jump out of airplanes, people that do all kinds of crazy stuff. We have to recognize not everybody looks at risk the same way we all do. And if you have those individuals, you're going to have to figure out how to have a conversation with them. On the one hand, they're good to hire because they will take a risk. But on the other hand, their brain is wired completely different. And, you know, I look at some of the extreme sports and watch what people are doing, and I'm like, these people are insane. But to themselves, obviously, they're not. And so if we got those people, we need to figure out who they are and figure out how we can have a conversation. Because if not, they can become that leader of that counterculture. That's where, like, where's this coming from? So we've got to know our people, and that's as any leader at any level. So
That sounded like a really great closing statement from Mike Richardson. That was a good closer, my man. That was unplanned and unscheduled. I loved it. Hey, I want to before we get off here, man. I want to really thank everybody for attending. Like, this has been awesome. It just drives me to do more of these because this is an important piece of discussion that we need to have. I wish there was 1,500 on this call, and we'll strive for that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the board members of the FDSOA, Terry Stewart from Canada and Trevor Shea from Canada. We got Lance, obviously, Scott Juracek on the West Coast. We got Phil Goglis and Ben Hawley on the East Coast. We got Rich Maddox as the past chair, and Doug Kelly is from the industry, and Michael Johnson is our treasurer. We've got a great management team. We've got a lot of people that care. And those people like Mike that aren't on the board currently are still engaged. Mark Keogh, Jack Sullivan. I mean, I'm looking at some of them here. We got a lot of great people that are trying to drive this forward. Don't quit. Jump on board. Let's do this together, and let's spread the word together. Please, if you haven't registered for the conference, jump in and we're gonna have a great time. We got some great events happening. Ben Hawley's gonna be playing live music at 2 different events. It's gonna be a fun time. It's gonna be a pretty unique experience. That's what we're trying to create here, is a fun environment where we can have these honest, open conversations. And I'm with Kane. If there's some debate, let's debate. I love debate. Let's talk about that, because we get to what's right when we talk through these things. Fair? All right.
Well, I put a link into the chat and for a survey. If you're still here, we would greatly appreciate if you could fill out the survey so we can understand how we can continue to make the content better for you, with you, alongside you. There will be an email that goes out before the end of the week with a link to this, and just continue to reach out to Eric with any comments, questions, and we appreciate the opportunity to learn from everyone today. So thank you all, and hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday and safe holiday season coming up.
Thanks, everyone. Great seeing y'all.